So, as it's done today, the United States Treasury creates a bond. I owe you $1 million.
Correct.
The Federal Reserve Bank of New York creates the million,
Right.
buys it,
Yep.
transfers over the digits
Yep.
into the Treasury.
And
so
then collects
Jackson
interest.
said, and collects interest. Jackson said, well, what's up with that?
Yeah.
Why don't we just do our own and cut out the Federal Reserve Bank? And he did. He ran on that. And how long did he get away with doing that?
Oh, for the next until 1861. It took a civil war to reinstitute.
So Jackson what year was he elected?
So for the age of Jackson, let's start in 1825.
1825.
And run right up until the 1860s.
So how did the bankers wrestle back control of
with
the
a civil
issue?
war?
Oh.
With a civil war. You know, so here.
That's curious.
Yeah, it was. And it was quoted by Benjamin Disraeli at the marriage of Leonora, which was the Rothschild daughter.
Oh,
and
I wasn't invited to that.
I wasn't either. And the two principal bankers in the Rothschild family, the sons, Lionel and James, the Rothschild patriarch said, I will divide the United States in half. Half for you, Lionel, and half for you, James. So that was his quote, the toast quote from a wedding.
From a wedding.
More than a couple of people
the
heard it.
The marriage of Lenora.
The marriage of his daughter, Leonora. I will divide the United States in half. Half for you, Lionel, and half for you, James. Now, that would be a boast if it didn't turn out history. That is exactly how the war was financed. Half of it was financed by the House of Rothschild, headed by Lionel, and half of it, the British House, was financed by James. So,
but how did
proud father's boast or secret master plan, however you want to call it, that's what it took for then President Lincoln, who was saying, well, geez, I need to fight a war. How am I going to do this? I got a war on my hands. Now, the argument is that...
But let me interrupt a second. Up until that point, the Treasury was still creating its own money, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
Well,
so why didn't Lincoln just create his own money?
Well, that's what he did.
Oh. Well, that could be dangerous.
So he needed the Legal Tender Act of 1861, which created the greenback, the very first unbacked Treasury notes since the War of 1812.
But if the federal Treasury is already creating money, why did he need another act?
No, because the Treasury was only creating money backed by gold or silver.
Oh.
So there were silver certificates, there were gold certificates, there was silver and gold certificates.
He didn't have
but there weren't unbacked notes. And so he
needed that. Yeah.
In order to get that, he had to give away the power for the banks to do the same thing with the National Banking Act. And the argument was that they would create the money necessary to stimulate the economy, which we needed to get on a war footing. So the whole scheme rested upon, we'll make this is an agreement, and since we own the legislature, we'll agree to this, the National Banking Act. So you get the power to create this many U.S. notes, and we get the power to form a national banking association, and we get to issue notes as well. That was
And that's how they got it back.
That's how they got in the door. They got their foot in the door.
And then since then, they've been increasing their, and then
they used
fast forward to 1913.
Well, they used the National Banking Act to drive out all other competition.
Oh, good.
So once all the other competition was driven out, then you had this loose association of national banks that had this note issuing authority, and they used it to buy all the critical industry and all of the legislation that they could afford. And by 1896, this lopsided concentration of capital, the age of the robber barons, gave us the election of Woodrow Wilson. That's the stage was set for the election.
For Jekyll Island.
Yeah. Well, that was all done and
done deal.
with. Yeah.